Hi everyone, my name is Dennis. I'm Chief Product Officer at Hacken, responsible for the development of the product and R&D inside Hacken. And today we're going to speak with this panelist about the Bermuda use case. I will tell you a little bit more about it in a minute, and I will ask our panelists to present themselves.
Hey, so good afternoon everyone. So first of all, it's super good to be here with all of you. Second of all, I'm super sorry to be in between you and your lunch. But it's promise it's going to be interesting. My name is Konstantin. I'm with Chainlink. At Chainlink, we are building a connectivity infrastructure between traditional finance systems and Rails and blockchain platforms. And I'm specifically focused on our compliance line of products: digital identity, policy management, and reporting components, also known as Chainlink Automated Compliance Engine.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Coeur. I'm Global Head of Digital Assets and Fund Distribution for Apex Group. I was also the co-founder of Tokeny. Tokeny is known for having authored the ERC 3643, which is now recognized as one of the leading standards for the issuance of digital securities on chain. For those who are not familiar with Apex, Apex is a global company represented in 52 countries. We're around 13,000 people. We manage around 2.7 trillion of assets for 14,000 customers, and we service around 37,000 funds, making us the largest privately owned asset servicer in the world. The company has acquired Tokeny in May last year, and now we are, this year, time flying, and now we are busy bringing tokenization as a capability across all the technology platform of Apex Group.
Hi, everyone, and thanks to the Hacking team for having us. My name is Juan Carlos León. I'm the Regulatory Technology Counsel at BluPrynt. BluPrynt was founded in 2024, to basically solve the problem of on-chain and off-chain parity in compliance and disclosure. The idea is that once we can create this compliance and identity layer, both on what it means to have a regulatory status and represent that on-chain, you can then enable downstream actions that, among other things, will allow us to create on-chain policy, regulated financial instruments and regulated stablecoins, an institutional and regulatory grade supervision monitoring system.
So we were speaking about the regulations a lot, and here is the example of how regulators' pretty proactive approach takes it. So in the middle of the summer, Bermuda Monetary Authority, they issued request for proposal on how can latest technology be embedded inside the regulatory supervision. And the use case was how to make sure that stablecoins are staying compliant, are staying safe, and that everything basically goes smoothly. And our company was lucky to pass through and to design this use case, and we are going to share it with you with the steps by steps and part of each of us, what we were doing, why we were doing it, and how basically to quickly and efficiently launch a stablecoin infrastructure inside the regulator with the whole compliance purposes. So I believe that I will ask guys to share part of each of them. I will start from the Hacken. Basically, we were providing the blacklisting for the infrastructure to make sure that all AML KYC is covered there, and general overview of what's happening inside the infrastructure overall. Yeah, guys, please.
Yeah, so one of the solutions we developed at BluPrynt and we've been developing over the last year and a half is the idea of creating Know Your Business at the protocol level. We call it Know Your Issuer. And the solution creates a cryptographic link between a real-world entity that passes sanctions list checks and basically traditional KYB, and the mint authority that they have over the wallets they control. This link allows us to verify that a specific asset is issued by a verified entity. And in the case of Bermuda, that entity holds one of the regulatory licenses that enables the issuance within that jurisdiction.
So from an Apex perspective, we consider stablecoin as standard assets. So we service large funds, open-ended and closed-ended. In the context of this proof of concept, what we have used is, on one hand, is corporate services. So the ability to incorporate entities in the country where the fund is being domiciled. We provide middle office, so we invest on behalf of the fund in the underlying assets, being obviously cash and other liquid instruments. We provide, of course, fund accounting and TA services. Fund accounting, we do daily NAV calculation, and we also provide a monthly attestation for proof of reserve. We also leverage the platform of Tokeny for tokenization. So there we can either use a basic ERC20, which is commonly used for stablecoin today, so with no specific control on the transfer or on the identity, or we can also leverage the ERC3643, which use this control function that is connected with an on-chain identity. And we plug that into the Chainlink environment for exactly what you're going to explain in a second.
Yeah, of course. So really, Chainlink in this use case is becoming kind of connectivity tissue, which connects all those components together. So we really apply a policy on top of a stablecoin, which ensures that every mint operation of a stablecoin doesn't exceed available proof of reserves. It also ensures that asset issuer is actually licensed, a legitimate entity, who is able to mint the stablecoin. Those are two things we are solving at the mint stage. When the stablecoin starts existing in a public cross-chain environment, we make sure it can only be movable between eligible entities. So no high-risk actor, no bad actor cannot access this stablecoin because we have data provided by Hacken in real time, so we can prevent those bad activities to happen.
As you see, it works as a puzzle. So different providers working together, making the very easy flow of the compliant and secure stablecoin. The next question is to all of you guys, basically. The difference between compliance by design stablecoin by using different ready providers or by creating everything themselves, basically, everything custom. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, obviously, the idea behind compliance by design is to leverage a standard implementation. I think the main purpose of the BMA was to ensure that as a regulator, they had full visibility on the different step of issuing a stablecoin, and they could ensure that there was no specific risk inherent to each of those steps. And by having indeed compliance by design, we are capable of standardizing this implementation, integrating the different steps that we've just described, unable to control the risk, and provide a level of comfort to the regulator that they can supervise the stablecoin within the context of the regulation they've been issuing, which is fundamental, obviously, because we're talking about new technology. I always say regulators are not technologists. It's already difficult for them to understand the technology, and to assess the level of risk of the technology is even more complicated. So providing this process end-to-end and identifying the specific risk and how our solutions are addressing those risks by design is very important for them.
I can actually follow up on that. Essentially, there is a kind of a good reason why we're having standards, because they facilitate distribution, they facilitate composability, they facilitate a lot of other great things. And just technically, speaking from like technology point of view, you can build whatever framework to drive compliance, which you would be comfortable with. However, how do you make other industry participants, protocols, asset issuers, and regulators to really trust that what you're building making sense? So that's why it's like extremely important. If you really want to enable composability for this industry, to run on a shared set of standards, which we can all trust, which we can all rely on, which we can all participate in.
I think one of the main lessons after this pilot is how kind of deep expertise in one kind of vertical area from each of our companies have allowed the pilot to not only flow, but kind of learn on itself. The idea that compliance by design is something that you can basically package and offer across jurisdictions, across regulations, especially in the context of new regulations coming on throughout the world, and especially here in the US, will again set the standard of what can be done, and leveraging the expertise on the identity, on the connectivity, on the issuance and reserve side, and risk monitoring and analytics, and putting it all together, and I think will eventually lead to easier scalability across the world, across jurisdictions, and across regulations as they come.
Thank you. The next question would be from the resilience standpoint, because we were talking about ready-to-use solutions from all of our companies and the specific focus on them. And at the same time, what level of resilience do you see is important for the regulator and for the stablecoin issuer? How do you see them embedded in the real-world scenarios?
Well, when we talk about resilience, I think we talk about operational risk. Having assets represented on chain doesn't reduce the operational risk, it's just change the nature of the operational risk. So you have to look at the different risk and see indeed how the technology can address those risks. So if you look, for example, at stable coins, it's about predictability on redemption. How do we make sure that there is always enough reserve behind the stable coin, so that if there is a lot of demand for redemption, that you don't create a risk behind the stable coin. There is operational continuity. If you start indeed operating on a stable coin, you have to have 24/7 resilience behind the operational team, and make sure that indeed those stable coins will be serviced around the world. So you need to provide 24/7, even obviously support during weekends. Then you have also other type of risk related to the nature of the blockchain behind, or the type of blockchain, or the number of blockchain. We obviously operate on multiple chain, and we need an interoperability solution like the one provided by Chainlink to ensure that indeed those stablecoin can operate from one chain to the other, and that you don't create liquidity risk behind. So there is a lot of things that obviously are inherent to the resilience of a stablecoin and the infrastructure behind, so that you can truly operate a stablecoin institutional grade, because obviously from a institutional perspective, they will not use stablecoin. They will not move from traditional fiat to stablecoin within having the same level of security and resilience that they have currently on the infrastructure they operate on.
What Daniel was just saying about institutional and regulatory grade compliance is the standard we're all aiming to achieve. Most of what we've seen with our talks with regulators throughout the world is kind of this light bulb before and after moment where they realize that this technology also affords new ways to create better methods of regulation and better methods of monitoring and supervision across their market. And the fact that regulatory and institutional grade implies, or it requires, bringing these standards to a kind of practical solutions and being able to prove them through sandboxes, through these kind of pilot programs that we can show how, create a case study to show how blockchain is also a technology for better market integrity, will end up being kind of one of the winning arguments.
What I really like about this pilot is a number of different vendors who participate into that. So see, we have a clear segregation of duties. On one side, we have Apex, who is actually facilitating issuance of stablecoin. On the other side, we have BluPrynt, who is providing identity data. We have Chainlink, who is playing a role of policy configuration enforcement layer. And we have Hacken, who is doing a separately monitoring of this setup and this configuration. This effectively allows clear segregation of duties and creates like a real resilience system, which is very, very hard to compromise and very, very hard to manipulate. So maybe we should call it like decentralized compliance. I don't know.
Yeah. Thank you. I would even add that you're completely right about the different vendors, and each of vendors have their own expertise and their own resilience level inside. So basically, for the next question, how can regulator who invites the vendors, who applies this regulation and standards, may be sure that supervision goes smoothly, that everything is as it should be. What are the monitoring capabilities and what are the rules there? Maybe not specifically with the BMA, but with the others as well. How do you see it?
I think it's we usually talk about like user experience and these kind of things, but it's interesting to think about when the user is the regulator, you know, and when the regulator is itself kind of monitoring or using a new kind of monitoring system on the market. But I think when that becomes like such a smooth transition, when it really looks familiar to what they're currently seeing and kind of just show that it's real time, it's transparent, it's auditable, it's flexible, and you can program it directly into the assets, creates just a kind of new vision, this kind of, as I was saying earlier, light bulb or before and after moment that provides, kind of shows the way into what's coming.
I think this is very challenging for regulators to step into technology. As I said, regulators are not technologists, so for them to understand the level of risk associated with this technology and how, as regulators, they can support this type of development with a certain scale. Because here, we talk about technology that is a couple of years old. They don't necessarily understand the risk behind. Coming with a company like us that obviously are, on one hand, highly regulated. Apex is regulated in 42 countries. Therefore, you know, we understand the level of risk associated with the service we provide, and we give them this level of comfort that indeed coming with new instruments that can be issued with scale. Obviously, if we look at the scale of the stablecoin market today, this is huge. So for the regulator to allow a framework that will basically become the main representation of the currency in the country is not trivial. So having the ability for them to work with providers like us that understand the level of risk and give them the level of confidence associated with the new service they will be offering is very important.
The way we really think about that is it's kind of a two-step process. Step number one is to verify that you configure your compliance requirements in the right way. Just a kind of a proof of configuration. Step number two is actually start doing real-time monitoring, making sure that the rules which were configured before are actually being enforced in the right way. There is no risk, there is no anomaly behaviors, and if there is anything which is not going as it's expected to go, they want to be notified about that immediately, not in with a kind of 2-week or whatever delay. Another kind of interesting thing which we are seeing right now with regulators is it's probably like first time ever we are seeing regulators who are willing to proactively participate in the configuration of compliance. Instead of saying, hey, here is kind of my rules, and figure out how you implement them, they're saying, hey, here is a specific policy in the form of a code, which you can apply to your token, which will make your token compliant with our jurisdiction. Here is blacklist we provide for users, here is something else we provide, here is all these different things which we need to apply and we need to maintain. It's hard to predict where all of that is going to go like 5 or 10 years from now, but I believe it's kind of a first time we're seeing a regulator being that proactive and being that interested to participate in this industry.
Completely agree, and I would say that we are also very happy to see that the regulators are much more proactive than ever before. I believe it's also happening because the blockchain nature gives ability to oversee much more. We at Hacken working with different regulators, but one of the example is also Emirates at ADGM, providing the full visibility dashboards of each and every licensee and what is happening inside their infrastructure. If they are violating the rules, regulators know about it immediately at the minute what the violation is happening. And the beauty is that regulator can by themselves creating these requirements, adopting them by themselves. To see active regulator, it's very nice thing. So thank you for that. I would have next question to Daniel, because you are working with SoExpand. How do you see the evolution of what's happening with the regulation and stablecoins? Because it's a long period of time already.
Well, obviously, every regulator now has a specific framework to support the issuance of stablecoins. So you mentioned ADGM. So there is obviously a lot of activity in Abu Dhabi, in the region. Now that you have a yield-generating stablecoin in UAE. So while with MiCA, obviously, you have non-yield-bearing stablecoin, and Genius Act is also restricting the yielding of the stablecoin. I think every regulator now has something either being released or being about to be released. That's why at Apex we also try to bring the ecosystem together in supporting the work of regulator. That's why we created the Middle East Stablecoin Association in ADGM. We also created the Bermuda Stablecoin Association, and we will continue in region creating those associations to have all the ecosystem coming together and being also in a position to advise and support the regulator in their work, not only with the type of proof of concept and pilot that we've been doing together, but also anticipating, what could be the regulation in the country by looking at what's happening in other countries. Clearly, the fact that those regulators are stepping in and we have more and more deployment in production, we will see an acceleration probably next year of the numbers of stablecoin, creating more risk again from the regulator perspective and potentially more need to have company, providing assistance and guidance to the regulators. Next year is going to be very interesting from that perspective.
It's actually very interesting because what do we see right now? And you just touched on that. We are really living in this really multi-jurisdictional world. And today, a question of how do you move assets cross-chain is more becoming a question of how do you move assets cross-jurisdiction? That's kind of a real question which we are right now trying to answer. It was touched slightly on the previous panel. Are we going to have a global framework which all of us follow and we're able to move assets very, very easily? Probably not. Probably it's not going to happen. Probably we're going to end up with kind of number of different rules and jurisdictions having them. And we are going to have some interoperability layers. And it's just important to have a technology which helps to identify, okay, who is the sender of this asset, who is the receiver of this asset, what jurisdictions they are in, which means what types of rules, policies, controls, whatever else needs to be applied on top of that transaction. That is the challenge which we are working on solving right now.
Last thing I would add there is, again, the fact that blockchain as regulatory technology provides new opportunities that I think are becoming more and more clear with these kind of use cases. As regulators start building out more complex financial instruments or seeing more complex financial instruments on chain, the fact that you can basically embed rules, embed regulatory status, and make it a part of the transaction, compliance by design, will allow that scalability across jurisdictions. So yeah, I think that's, again, thinking about it as regulatory technology, as part of the regulatory innovation required, will definitely allow us to take that next step.
I would add to that we see from Hacken side, this is very interesting from the perspective that almost each regulation that wants to license the digital asset issuer, they want to oversee the whole infrastructure to make sure that all risks are covered. And it's definitely the right approach because risks might be in not only in smart contracts or in AML, they can be in Web2 infrastructure. But at the same time, regulators are trying to put companies inside their jurisdiction with a completely separate infrastructure for their license. And it creates huge challenges because one big global company needs to divide their operation on, dozens, small one, specifically to get license in this different jurisdiction. So I believe that one unified framework that works across jurisdictions will allow the companies to make these decisions much easier and implementation much cheaper than it is right now. Yeah, basically that's it from our side. I don't know, maybe last couple words from you guys. It would be great to hear.
just quickly to follow up what you just said and what Daniel said, it's just important to have those standards which we can all interpret in the same way and which we all can rely on.
Yeah, I think what obviously we've been trying to do is to really define the golden standard for stablecoin issuance, taking our technology and demonstrating how this technology can work end to end. So we can certainly improve. We do believe, for example, at Apex that monthly proof of reserve is not sufficient. We have to move to daily proof of reserve. We have to move from permissionless stablecoin to permission stablecoin, where we connect identity with stablecoin as well to, again, provide more confidence to large institutions around KYC and AML. So we see, again, improvement to be made on how we package those solutions. But definitely the work of regulator and the appetite of regulator is supporting that vision.
I would say that if the answer to your answer to the question, do I think on-chain is the next iteration of finance is yes, then you also have to create or understand how you bring the rule of law and regulation on-chain as well. And I think this pilot goes a long way to prove that.
Agree. Thank you very much.